you will remember this moment, not tonight and not next week, but on some ordinary afternoon after the thing you now ache for has quietly become a fact of your life. You will remember that you once sat exactly where you are sitting, and you will laugh, gently, at how hard you were gripping something that was already yours. I am speaking to you from the end, from the place where it is done, and the only thing standing between you and that afternoon is a single change in how you hold what you desire. You have been treating your miracle like breaking news. Tonight, I will teach you to treat it like old news. I want to speak to you the way I would speak to a man or woman who came to see me after a lecture, when the hall had emptied and there was no need any longer for performance, only truth. So let me tell you what I see when I look at you. You are checking. You have made your desire into something you monitor, refreshing your life the way one refreshes a message that has not yet been answered. You wake, and before you have even opened your eyes fully, some part of you reaches out into the day to see whether it has come. It has not. So you set your jaw, and you try again, a little harder this time, to believe. I want you to hear something, and I want you to hear it without shame, because there is no shame in it. You have been faithful in your longing, but longing is the posture of a man who does not yet have, and the subconscious does not respond to what you want. It responds to what you are being. Every time you check, you make a confession. You tell the deeper mind, in the clearest language it knows, the language of feeling, that the thing is not here. I wrote it plainly, and feeling is the secret. The subconscious accepts as true that which you feel as true. It does not weigh your words. It does not grade your effort. It takes your feeling as a report of fact, and it acts on that report alone. And the very intensity of your reaching, the constant checking, the hoping, the watching, that is a daily announcement of absence dressed up as devotion. Now let me take you back, because this was not a truth I invented in a study. It was beaten into me, gently but without mercy, by a man I have spoken of in nearly every lecture I have given since, Abdullah, the Ethiopian rabbi who taught me in New York the years I was young, unknown, and often broke. I was living in New York, and it was December, and I wanted more than almost anything I had wanted in my life, to be with my family in Barbados for Christmas. I had no money for the passage, none. I went to Abdullah, half expecting sympathy, half expecting some technique, some ritual I could perform. What I got instead was this. He looked at me and he said, "You are in Barbados." I said, "But Ab, I am here, in New York." He would not hear it. He said it again. I was in Barbados, and then he turned from me and shut the door in my face. That is where I will pause the story, only for a moment, because there is something you need before I finish it, and if I give you everything now, you will forget the middle for the sake of the end. Stay with me. Before I go further, I want to give you something, and I want you to take it the moment I say it, while your attention is still high, before the teaching pulls you back under the way teachings do. If what I have said so far has touched something true in you, if you recognize yourself in the checking, in the watching, in the exhausting labor of trying to believe, then do one thing, right now, before you forget. Comment one word below this video, just one word, rewrite, nothing else. Not a sentence, not an explanation. Just rewrite in the comments and I will personally see it and I will personally reply to you with a link. I ask you to do this now, this minute, because the mind that is moved at this moment will not be moved the same way in 20 minutes. Comment, rewrite. That is all it takes. And you are not asking me for a favor. You are claiming something I built for you, freely, and it is waiting on the other side of that one word. Here is why I stop to say this now, in the middle of the very thing I am teaching you. What I have given you so far, what I am about to give you in the story of Abdullah and in the teaching that follows, it is real, and it works, but it is one movement of four. Every clean assumption I ever held, every desire I ever watched harden into fact, rested on a nightly sequence Abdullah gave me, in a particular order, and it does not work if you take it out of order. First, revision, the clearing of the soil, going back over the day, and rewriting the scenes that wounded you or unsettled you, so that you are not carrying a contaminated day into your night. Second, the correction of inner speech, the silent talking that runs beneath your waking hours, instructing the subconscious, hour by hour, whether you have it or you don't. Third, the precise construction of a scene, not a vague picture, not a wish floating in fog, but a specific, sensory moment implying the fulfillment of the desire. And fourth, falling asleep inside that state, so the transfer from the conscious mind to the subconscious is actually completed, the way a seed is not planted until it is covered. You have been doing one of these, perhaps two, and you have wondered why the feeling is so bright at 10 at night and gone by morning. It fades because the sequence was never completed. The subconscious received a partial instruction, and partial instructions produce partial results. This is not a failure of your faith. It is a gap in the method, and I intend to close it for you tonight. Here is where I begin. Before Abdullah ever taught me a scene, before he gave me a single word to affirm, he made me master one thing, and one thing only, revision, before sleep. He would not move me forward until that was solid. I have taken that exact practice, the one he gave me those years ago, and I have written it into a short, free guide I call Rewrite Tonight. It is not a summary of this video. It is a complete 3-minute pre-sleep revision, how to choose the 3 moments from your day that are quietly poisoning your sleep and your assumption, how to revise each one so the subconscious carries a clean record into the night instead of a wounded one, and how to feel the actual clearing that finally allows every other technique, the scene, the state, the assumption, to reach the deeper mind at all. It is free. It is immediate. It is the first link in the description beneath this video. Open it tonight. And for those of you who feel it stirring already, who sense that the clearing alone will not be enough for you, who are ready to go further, I will tell you plainly that the full sequence exists as well. 7 nights, 4 movements. The exact order Abdullah gave it to me. No more and no less. You will find it waiting the moment you open the guide, but I am not going to hand it to you before you are ready for it. Start with the clearing. Start tonight. Do not reach past the first step for the sake of the fourth. Take the first link in the description and open the guide tonight, or comment the word "rewrite" below right now, and I will send it to you myself. Not as a comment, as a decision. You are done lying down at night carrying the weight of an unrevised day. You are done planting seeds in soil you never cleared. Comment "rewrite" or open the link and begin exactly where I began. Now, back to Abdullah and the door he shut in my face, because you have not yet heard what it taught me, and it is the whole of what I want you to carry out of this teaching tonight. I stood in that hallway for a long moment after the door closed. I will tell you honestly, I was almost angry. I had come to a teacher with a real problem, a real longing, and I had been given, it seemed to me, nothing at all. No plan, no comfort, just a strange, flat insistence that I was somewhere I plainly was not. But Abdullah did not deal in comfort. He dealt in law, and the law he was demonstrating to me, without a single word of explanation, was this. He would not permit me to occupy the state of a man in New York who wanted Barbados. He forced me, by simple refusal, into the state of a man who was already there. I went home that night turning it over, and something in me, reluctantly, resentfully at first, began to obey. I did not book a passage because I had no money to book one. I did not make a plan because I had no means to make one. What I did was smaller, and it seemed to me at the time almost embarrassingly simple. I began to fall asleep each night as though my head were resting on a bed in Barbados. I let myself hear, in imagination, the particular sounds of that island, sounds I had grown up with and knew in my body, not sounds I had to invent. I felt the warmth of it. I felt my family around me, and I did not treat this as a wish. I treated it, deliberately, night after night, as something that had already happened, as old news. Weeks passed, and then, with no logic I could trace to any effort of my own, a means arrived. A friend secured me a berth on a ship, under circumstances that had nothing to do with any planning I had done. I did not manufacture that path. I received it. I sailed. I spent that Christmas in Barbados, with my family, exactly as I had been sleeping into, night after night, weeks before I ever boarded a single ship. And here is the mirror I want to hold up for you, because I made Abdullah's mistake first, before I ever learned to stop making it. I kept confessing New York. Every protest I made in that hallway, "But Ab, I am here," was me insisting to the deeper mind that the fact was not yet the fact. Your daily checking, your refreshing, your quiet, anxious watching to see if it has come, that is you, standing exactly where I stood, insisting to God that you are not yet in Barbados. And the door Abdullah shut in my face was not cruelty, it was instruction. He would not let me finish the sentence that kept me in lack. Now I want to open this all the way, because a story, however true, is not yet a method, and I did not come here tonight only to move you. I came to teach you exactly how this operates, so that you can do, deliberately and tonight, what took me weeks of stumbling to arrive at by instinct. The first thing you must understand, and understand at the level of conviction rather than mere agreement, is that you do not create your desire. You select it. I have said this in lecture after lecture, and I will say it again here, because it undoes almost everything the world has taught you about how change happens. The state you long for already exists, fully formed, in what I call the imaginal realm, the realm of the already done. You are not being asked to build a house. You are being asked to move into a house that is already standing, fully furnished, waiting only for you to occupy it as your own address. Nothing is being constructed when you assume the end. You are simply moving in. This changes what your task actually is. Your task tonight is not to strain toward a future event. Your task is to occupy, now, in feeling, the state of the one who already has it, and the proof that you have truly occupied that state. The proof, not the theory, is not excitement. It is naturalness. When something is genuinely yours, you do not feel thrilled about it. You do not walk around your house each morning celebrating that you have hands, that you have a roof, that you have air in your lungs. These things are so entirely yours that they have become invisible to your feeling. That invisibility, that flatness, that utter lack of drama, that is what possession actually feels like. Not fireworks, silence. And this is why I want you to hear something that will feel, at first, like a contradiction of everything you have been taught by every enthusiastic voice telling you to get excited about your dreams. Excitement and anxiety are to the subconscious the very same signal. Both say, "This is not yet normal to me." This is still an event, not a fact. A man does not get excited about the mail arriving because the mail arriving is entirely ordinary to him. But if a letter he desperately needed and had given up on suddenly appeared, his excitement would betray, in that very instant, how deeply he had doubted it would come. Excitement is the emotional signature of surprise, and surprise is only possible where there was uncertainty. You cannot be surprised by what you already calmly know to be true. So, old news is not a mood I am asking you to force onto your face while your insides are still churning. It is a state you arrive at honestly by living in the end long enough and steadily enough that the wish fulfilled stops feeling like a miracle and starts feeling like a fact. The way you feel about a trip you have already taken, a bill you have already paid, a call you have already received. Nobody lies awake, anxious about a call they took yesterday. It is finished. It is behind them. That is precisely the emotional register you are aiming for regarding a thing that has not yet appeared in the world of the senses. Because in the world of imagination, the only world where creation actually occurs, it is not ahead of you. It is behind you. I wrote, in The Power of Awareness, that prayer is the art of assuming the feeling of being and having that which you want. Read that sentence slowly. Not the art of wanting harder, not the art of asking more sincerely, the art of assuming the feeling of already being it, already having it. And I wrote elsewhere, in that same book, words I want you to take home with you tonight and let settle into your bones. You must first assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled, and then, having assumed it, you must remain faithful to it. The assumption is not the whole of the work. The faithfulness is the other half, and it is the half almost everyone abandons, because faithfulness to an assumption that contradicts your five senses feels, at first, like a kind of madness. It is not madness. It is the entire operation of the law. The mechanism beneath all of this is simple enough that a child could grasp it, though it takes most of us years to actually live it. The deeper mind hardens into fact whatever feeling you fall asleep in. This is not poetry. It is the literal operation of consciousness at the threshold of sleep, when the conscious, reasoning mind, the part of you that argues and doubts and calculates the odds, grows quiet, and the subconscious lies open and receptive, taking an impression the way wet clay takes the shape of a hand pressed into it. Fall asleep in the feeling of waiting, and the deeper mind hardens the weight. It gives you more of exactly what you handed it, more longing, more distance, more not yet. Fall asleep in the feeling of already having, quietly, without drama, as old news, and it hardens the having. It has no choice in the matter. It does not judge whether your feeling is justified by the facts around you. It simply accepts the feeling as the fact and goes to work reorganizing your outer world to match what you have already declared, in feeling, to be true. I want to walk with you now through 4 truths, one at a time, and I do not want you merely to hear them. I want you to feel each one land, the way a key turns in a lock it was cut for. The first truth is this, and it will sound at first like I am contradicting every voice that has ever told you to get excited about what you want. Your excitement is a leak. Sit with that. The joy you feel imagining your desire, the little thrill, the flutter, the rush that makes you feel, in the moment, as though you must be doing something right, because look how alive it makes you feel. That joy is not evidence of faith. It is evidence that some part of you still does not believe it. I wrote in Feeling is the Secret that feeling is the secret, and that the subconscious accepts as true that which you feel is true. But feeling is not the same thing as emotional intensity. A man does not feel intensely about the fact that the sun rose this morning. He simply knows it. Intensity belongs to anticipation, and anticipation by its very nature belongs to the not yet. You cannot anticipate something you already have. You can only anticipate what remains outside of you. Think of the difference between a man who wins a great sum of money in a lottery and a man who wakes, as he has for years, in his own bed, in his own home. The lottery winner screams. He weeps. He calls everyone he knows. It is astonishing to him, because until the moment the numbers were read, he did not believe it would be his. But the man in his own bed feels nothing of the kind about waking there. It is not astonishing. It is not even noteworthy. It is simply his life. That flatness is not indifference. It is the deepest possible form of certainty, so complete it no longer needs to announce itself. I will tell you something about Barbados that I have not always emphasized in the retelling. By the time I actually stood at the rail of that ship, the arrival itself was almost anticlimactic. I had already, in feeling, lived so completely inside that homecoming night after night in my bed in New York that the actual event felt less like a discovery and more like a confirmation of something I already knew. The real journey had happened weeks earlier, in the stillness before sleep. Boarding the ship was simply the outer world at last, catching up to what had already been settled within. So here is what I ask you to do, and it will feel strange at first, because it runs against everything the culture around you insists on. Stop celebrating the imagined outcome. Stop working yourself up into a lather of hope and thrill every time you picture it. Instead, practice boredom with it. Sit with the scene of your fulfilled desire until it stops giving you a rush, until you can hold it in your mind the way you hold the fact of your own name without any particular charge at all. When you can imagine it and feel almost nothing, no fireworks, no urgency, that flatness is the signal. That is the sound of acceptance. That is when the deeper mind has stopped treating it as a request and started treating it as a record. The second truth follows directly from the first, and it is this: checking is uncreating. Every time you look for evidence, every time you scan your circumstances to see whether the thing has arrived yet, every time you ask yourself, has it happened? Is there any sign? You delay the very thing you are looking for. I wrote in The Power of Awareness that the world is a mirror, forever reflecting what you are doing within yourself. Read that again. The world does not reflect what you want. It reflects what you are doing, inside, in this moment. And checking is a doing. To check is to enact doubt. It does not matter how sincerely you hope while you check. The checking itself is the confession, because you cannot look for evidence of a thing you already fully possess. A man does not check his mailbox 17 times a day for a letter he is holding in his hand. This is precisely what Abdullah refused to let me do. When I protested, "But Ab, I am here in New York," I was checking. I was looking at the visible facts and reporting them back to him as though they were the deciding evidence, and he would not permit it. He would not let me finish that sentence, would not let me linger even a moment in the state of the man who lacked what he wanted. He said again that I was in Barbados, and then he shut the door because the conversation itself, the very act of entertaining New York as the real condition, was the poison. He was not being unkind. He was protecting the one thing that mattered, the purity of my assumption. So here is your work with this truth. Set the case closed. Decide, as a matter of settled fact, that the matter is finished. The way a court closes a case once the verdict is rendered. No more evidence is entertained, because there is nothing left to decide. When your mind reaches out, as it inevitably will, to inspect the situation, to look for a sign, to ask, has it come yet? Answer it the way one who is already home would answer. That's already handled. Refuse the conversation. Refuse it the way Abdullah refused mine. Do not argue with the doubt. Do not even dignify it with a rebuttal. Simply decline to reopen a case that has already been settled in the only court that matters, the court of your own assumed feeling. The third truth is one that will relieve a great deal of the private exhaustion many of you have been carrying without naming it. The path is not your job. If you can see exactly how your desire will come to you, which conversation, which introduction, which sequence of events, you have not assumed the end at all. You have merely made a more elaborate plan, and you have limited your good to what your own reasoning mind is capable of arranging. I wrote about this at length in The Law and the Promise, under what I called the bridge of incidents. Once the end is truly assumed, not wished for, not hoped for, but assumed, occupied, lived from, a series of events you did not plan and could not have planned begins to arrange itself, carrying you, without your engineering, toward the fact you have already accepted as true. I had no plan for Barbados. None. I did not know a single soul with a ship, did not have the beginnings of a scheme for raising the fare. And yet a berth appeared, through a friend, under circumstances that had nothing to do with any effort I had made toward that end. I did not build that bridge. I walked across one that was built for me because I had stopped watching the road and started living, in feeling, at the destination. This is the part that unsettles the reasoning mind the most, because the reasoning mind wants credit, wants a mechanism it can point to and say, "Yes, I see how that worked." But the bridge of incidents does not owe you an explanation. It owes you only its arrival, once the assumption beneath it is genuine. So here is your work with this truth, and it is, in its way, the hardest work of all, because it asks you to surrender the illusion of control that the reasoning mind clings to so fiercely. Stop rehearsing the how. Every time you catch yourself constructing the mechanism, imagining the exact phone call, the exact conversation, the exact sequence by which your good must arrive, gently release it, occupy the end, let the bridge build itself, out of your sight, in a workshop you were never meant to see. Your only labor, and it is enough, is to remain faithful to the assumption, the way I stayed faithful to the feeling of Barbados through weeks that gave me, on the surface, no reason at all to believe a passage was coming. The fourth truth brings the other three to their point, and it is this: naturalness is the finish line, not the reward. You will feel ordinary about your desire before it manifests in the world of fact, and that flat, ordinary feeling is not a stepping stone toward the manifestation. It is the manifestation, already accomplished, in the only place manifestation ever actually occurs, which is consciousness. I wrote that you must assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled and remain faithful to it. And I wrote elsewhere that the man who is aware of assuming and remaining in the assumption will realize his desire. Notice the order. Realization in the outer world is placed at the end of that sentence as the result. The assumption, faithfully held, is placed at the beginning as the cause. Fulfillment is a state occupied now. The outer facts you are waiting to see are only the shadow that the state, held long enough, eventually casts. I have told you already how I slept, night after night, as though I were already in Barbados, hearing sounds I knew from childhood, feeling the particular ease of a body at home, rather than a body straining toward home. And I have told you that by the time I actually boarded that ship, the feeling of arrival had already become so ordinary to me that the physical journey felt almost like a formality. That is what you are aiming for, not the thrill of getting it, the boredom of having it. Chase the feeling of all readiness, not the feeling of a coming thrill. When your desire becomes old news within you, when you can consider it the way you consider a bill already paid, without any particular charge, without any need to check the account again to be sure, it is done. Not almost done. Now let me give you something to do with all of this tonight. Because a teaching that is only understood and never practiced is a teaching that dies in the very place it was received. Tonight, as you settle towards sleep, in that particular drowsy, half-lit state where the body has gone still, but the mind has not yet slipped away, the state I described at length in Feeling is the Secret as the most productive state for impressing the subconscious. Do not imagine yourself in the act of getting your desire. Do not picture the moment of arrival, the celebration, the announcement. That moment is still charged with anticipation, and anticipation belongs to lack. Instead, imagine a moment well after you already have it, a dull, unremarkable Tuesday, weeks or months past the event, when you are no longer thinking about it at all, when it has simply folded itself into the ordinary furniture of your life. Feel how little you feel about it in that imagined moment. Let it be flat. Let it be quiet. Let it be old news. And stay there, in that flatness, in that quiet certainty, until sleep takes you, so that the last impression the deeper mind receives before the door closes for the night is not a wish, but a fact already settled. That is one movement, and it is a real one, and practiced faithfully, it will begin to move mountains you have been straining against for years. But I told you earlier, there were 4 movements, not one, and the full clearing that allows this scene to actually land, the revision that empties the day first, so that this quiet scene of already having falls into soil that has been cleared rather than soil choked with the weeds of an unrevised day. That is what waits for you in the Rewrite Tonight guide. Do the scene I have just given you tonight exactly as I have described it. And when you open the guide, add the clearing that Abdullah insisted on before he would teach me anything else. So hear me as I bring this teaching to its close. The silence you have been calling a delay is not a delay. It is the bridge being built while you sleep. A series of events arranging themselves out of your sight, none of which you are required to manage, none of which you could have engineered if you had tried. The absence of visible proof is not the law failing you, it is the law working exactly where all real work is done, beneath the surface, in the dark, where every true thing is finished long before it is ever seen by the eye. You do not have to make it happen. You have to stop making it not yet. And here is the sentence I want you to carry with you out of this teaching. The one I want you to return to on that ordinary afternoon after it is done. The one that will feel, in hindsight, as though it was written for you alone. You were never waiting for your desire. Your desire was waiting for you to treat it as already yours. There is one more layer beneath everything I have told you tonight. The thing that makes old news possible in the first place. The hidden current running beneath every hour of your day, whether you are aware of it or not. You cannot feel your miracle as old news while your inner speech spends all day, every day, quietly telling the deeper mind that it has not come. I wrote in The Power of Awareness that your inner talking mirrors the degree of your self-conception, and that inner talking is running, right now, whether you are listening to it or not, instructing the subconscious, hour by hour, in exactly the state you actually occupy. Next time, I will show you how to catch that silent conversation underneath your own life, and how Abdullah taught me to change it, word by word, until it stopped confessing lack and started confessing fact. That is where it is already done, stops being an idea you admire, and becomes the very way you think.